headline says it all, ladies and gentlemen. Trump praises Saddam Hussein. Trumplicans praise Trump's praise of Saddam Hussein. No one shocked or awed. Donald Trump praised Saddam Hussein. I wish I was making this up. I wish this whole thing was being made up. This whole thing is a Saturday Night Live skit come to life in nightmarish fashion. Yes, that's right. Donald Trump praised Saddam Hussein a week ago. No, he did not merely say that deposing him left a vacuum filled by ISIS. Sorry. If that were all it was, then we wouldn't be having this scintillating conversation. But that is what his defenders are frantically focusing on, trying to shift the debate and move the window, but that is absolutely not the end of it. What Trump said was that Saddam Hussein had an awesome way of dealing with terrorism that was laudable and was an example to be followed. Understand, Saddam Hussein was a state sponsor of terrorism. He was in league with Al-Qaeda. He was in league with the hijackers of the Achille Lauro. He was a state sponsor of terror. And he was also a dictator. Murderous, mass-murdering dictator. But Donald Trump says that 3 cheers for Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was a great man. Saddam Hussein knew how to deal with terrorists. Yeah, he employed them. In the English language as spoken in the United States, there's a word we use for such words. Praise. First, talking about Iraq, Trump said that we shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have destabilized. But then he said this, quote, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy, he said. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists. He sponsored them. He killed terrorists. He did that so good. They didn't read them their rights. They didn't talk. They were a terrorist. It was over. Today, Iraq is a harbor for terrorism. So what Donald Trump is saying here is to effectively fight Islamic fundamentalism, you have to implement a police state. Now, isn't that what the left accused George W. Bush of doing when he had the audacity to actually try to resist Islamic fundamentalism? They accused him of shredding the Constitution. They accused him of setting up a police state. They accused him of being a tyrant and a dictator. Now here's Donald. I mean, that was the left-wing line. You can't fight Islamic fundamentalism. If you try to resist Islamic fundamentalism, you're a dictator. Now here's Donald Trump coming along and saying, yeah, you're right. If we want to effectively resist Islamic fundamentalist terrorism, we've got to implement a police state. Saddam Hussein had it right. This is your doing, Trumplicans. This is what happens when you shut off your brains. This is what happens when you throw your principles overboard. This is what happens when all you obsess on is fight, 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 and forget what it is you're supposed to be fighting for. I mean, how badly you have gotten played, how badly you have gotten hoodwinked and deceived and conned and defrauded and bilked, taking down the Republican Party with it, destroying the Republican Party as a vehicle for the conservative movement of which you are no longer members. Because you've followed after a guy who thinks that Saddam Hussein and Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are the examples for America to follow. Remember, Donald Trump thinks that Tianenmen Square was a great exercise in strength on the part of the Chi-Coms, running over defenseless democracy protesters. Strength! He thinks that's a good thing. He praised Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was a brutal, mass-murdering Hitlerite dictator. He thinks that Saddam Hussein is the example to follow for us, for the United States of America. Trump continued, "We cannot let them get away with what they're doing right now, terrorizing the world. We're going to be so strong, we're going to be so tough, we're going to be so vicious, and we're going to knock them for a loop." Which can be done without following Saddam Hussein's example. He did it well. He did it so good. He didn't do these wrong things. Instead, he did these right things. We will be like that. That's what Trump said. That's what Trump said. Those are the words that he made using his mouth. You can talk about regime change all you want, but what he said was Saddam was good at this. He's tough. We should be more like him. Circa pre-Gulf War II. That is what Donald Trump said. Trumplicans, it is not Paul Ryan's fault that Donald Trump praised Saddam Hussein. It's not the GOP establishment's fault. It's not none of the above's fault. It's not Never Trumper's fault. It's not my fault. It's not even Hillary Clinton's fault. It's Donald Trump's fault, and therefore it is your fault for nominating him. Every person who has endorsed Donald Trump, this is your life now. You can't, nor will you ever, scrape the stench, the stink, and the taint off of yourselves. And I can't imagine you will ever be welcomed back into conservative circles. Not unless you confess your sins. Not unless you, and the ones out there, you know who you are. Unless you come to me, get down on your knees, and admit we were stupid, we were idiots, we screwed up, we ruined the Republican Party, we ruined conservatism, and we guaranteed we put Hillary Clinton's fat ass in the White House. You admit that, and you repent, and you beg for forgiveness. Speaking for myself, I might consider your supplication. But nothing short of that's going to be sufficient for me. You people have done this to us. You people have done this to what used to be my party. I'm out of it. You people left me. I didn't move. You people did. You people chased after a Saddam Hussein, Tianenmen Square, Vladimir Putin worshipping fanboy. Strength. You people did it. Nobody made you. Nobody forced you. And speaking of Paul Ryan, he made the face that, and we have said this many times before, you're just going to have to go ahead and get used to making. You could read his thoughts. It was like, they weren't on his sleeve. His thoughts were on his face. Oh, no, what are we going to do? I mean, if you want to know why there are so many elected Republicans who are skipping the convention in Cleveland next week, there you go. There you go. And you know, you talk about, the GOP establishment never listens to the grassroots. This maybe is why! The grassroots got what they wanted. Now look. But you people are so emotionally invested in this that you're never going to admit that you're wrong. How badly you screwed up, screwed us, screwed the party, screwed the movement, just screwed up. Ryan shouldn't be shocked, and I'm sure he's not. Trump's applause for Saddam Hussein echoes his praise for communist China's Tianenmen Square Massacre. He has similar praise for Vladimir Putin. Like his followers, Trump admires authoritarian strength. He believes in it. He does not believe in the United States Constitution, Mr. Gibbs. But you've made your choice too. Besides, and more importantly, Trump has been saying this exact thing, including the Harvard bit, for years, almost word for word. Only now that the primary is over, is the media pivoting like Trump is incapable of doing and making it into a firestorm. Gee, how unsurprising. As for Paul Ryan, I guess he just never saw the other videos. What you're going to have here in a moment. Oh, and by the way, here's something worth noting. Saddam Hussein was a state sponsor of terror. Yeah, that's actually right. Yeah, major firestorm on social media and opinion articles after Donald Trump praised Saddam Hussein's awesome and desirable anti-terror policies, which apparently he thinks we should adopt. Thus, of course, again, demonstrating, validating every pacifist left-wing nut attack against conservatism, against peace through strength, against common sense, against the Republican Party, against the Tea Party, that the left has vomited in our direction for years, for decades even. But the bit about Saddam Hussein being replaced by terrorist Harvard isn't a new one for the Donald. In fact, he's been saying it for years. First, here he is speaking in North Carolina.
Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists. He did that so good. They didn't read him the rights. They didn't talk. They were a terrorist. It was over. Today, Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to be a terrorist, you go to Iraq. It's like Harvard. Okay?
Also, during Tuesday night's rally, Trump spent time criticizing President Obama's foreign policy in a whole new way by praising late Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, after claiming he had always been against the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq. Trump said he had warned it would destabilize the Middle East and that the rise of ISIS is proof of it.
And now, here is an interview with Jake Tapper back in October of last year.
But you also recently said that the Middle East would be better off with Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and Assad in power. How does...
I didn't say Assad, but we certainly have not gained anything with Gaddafi. And you look at what happened. I mean, look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Iraq used to be no terrorists. He would kill the terrorists immediately. It was like, now it's the Harvard of terrorism. Iraq. If you look at Iraq from years ago, I'm not saying he was a nice guy. He was a horrible guy. But it was a lot better than it is right now. Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya. Frankly, there is no Iraq and there is no Libya. It's all broken up. They have no control. Nobody knows what's going on.
So the world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
and Gaddafi in power?
100%. Now, as far as Assad is concerned,
what about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk about, well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, look what happened. Libya is a catastrophe. You look at our ambassador as an example, okay? Libya is a disaster. Iraq is a disaster. Syria is a disaster. The whole Middle East. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack Obama. It all blew up. Now, one thing about Assad, not a good guy. I understand that. But we're backing and spending billions and billions of dollars on backing rebels that we have no idea who they are. And a lot of people think they're ISIS. I happen to think they're ISIS, but who knows? But we're spending billions of dollars to get Assad out with people that we have no idea who they are. I don't think that's smart. We have to rebuild our country. Our country's falling to pieces. We have 19 trillion in debt. We have infrastructure that's a disaster. Our roadways, our airports, our schools, everything. We have to start thinking about ourselves. We're pouring trillions of dollars into the Middle East, and we have nothing for it. We have nothing.
And here he is, way back in January of 2014. Give a listen.
It's so out of control. It's so scary. And, you know, all this money's going, and now, if you look at Iraq, and I've never been a fan of what's going on in Iraq. I'm a very conservative person. I'm a very strong military person. I believe in it so strongly. But, you know, whether you like Saddam Hussein or not, he used to kill terrorists. I mean, terrorists did not have fun in that country. Now, that's the Harvard of terrorism. When you want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq. That's what, it's like a catastrophe. And all of that money. But if you look over the last month, Iraq is blowing up around them. It's a disaster.
My favorite part of that one is where he says, whether you like Saddam Hussein or not, as if this is the subject of some sort of ongoing debate about whether or not Saddam was super likable or somehow a good guy. Also funny, people say whether you like Trump or not all the time. That's funny. Anyway, it's not even the first time he said it this year. Here he is in February, just before the South Carolina GOP town hall. Cut 4. Go!
You know, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. But one thing about him, he killed terrorists. Now Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to become a terrorist, you go to Iraq. Saddam Hussein understood, and he killed terrorists. Bad guy. But if the president and other people, and frankly, Obama was no better, because the way he got us out was a disaster.
This isn't new, is the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, but it exploded last Tuesday as media folks tweeted and reported on it, now that they have successfully imposed Donald Trump on the Republican Party as its presidential nominee. Arguably the biggest media coup ever. It was a top trending topic on Twitter and dominated social media. This time, now only since the primary is over. I can't imagine why that could be. Can you?